Welcome everybody to the NBA Draft Aftermath show. I'm joined by friend of the show, EJ. How you doing, EJ?
Oh, CT, what's up, my man? It's good to see you. It's good to see you later on at night here in the States in New York City. But it's good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Yep. Doing as good as I can do. Feeling different, weird feeling like we talked about just backstage. But we've got a lot to talk about, airing out everything, all our thoughts as well, taking questions from the chat as well. This is group therapy for Knicks fans as well. We'll be talking about the plan moving forward, what seems evident in terms of what the New York Knicks are going to be focusing on. We're going to be breaking down the players' games. I'll give you my scouting report on the two pickups who have picked up so far, and we'll be breaking down all the movements from all the picks and everything. But yeah, salute to the chat, everyone here, JW and Tiffin Smith, Darren, Sherwin, D Cool as well. Yeah, EJ, I'm glad I've got you because I need you to make sense of last night. But let's start straight away. What was your initial thoughts? Did you watch the whole evening and watch it unfold? What was going through your mind?
Listen, I woke up yesterday morning excited, went to work, rushed back home, found the perfect spot on my couch, turned on to local coverage of ESPN. I had all of the different podcasts and things going on in the background, had two computers up to make sure that Twitter was all right and to make sure that I got as much information as possible. I crossed my fingers, crossed my toes, praying that the prediction that I made the last time we were on with Berman about possibly trading up for Jaden Ivey, and thinking it was possible. And then, Sacramento, number 4 goes by and they choose Keegan Murray. And then all of a sudden you start thinking to yourself, is this possible? Is there a chance? And, even after the Pistons had chosen Jaden Ivey, there was still this commentary in terms of there being a possibility that we might get him. And then once you get to number 11 and you hear that the pick had been traded, then all hell broke loose and it got confusing. So, I don't know if I can be mad. I don't know if I can be happy. I'm probably like every other Knicks fan right now, just confused and hoping for clarity in terms of direction. So that was my general reaction last night. Stayed up the whole night trying to make sense of it. And I still don't know where exactly we're going with this, but it was an interesting night. How about yourself?
Yeah. I'll use an analogy, and it's like we're building up for this big event. Content creators have been doing so many shows on the draft and prospects and all of that, expecting or hoping to make a selection. I was saying that I really wanted the Knicks to stay at 11 or trade up and just to welcome in a new young talent first and foremost. So I liken it to a kid waking up on Christmas Day, and rather than having a Christmas gift under the tree, there's a voucher or a coupon for redeem your present in a year's time or in the future, and it's like the kid's confused. It's like what do we do with this? And the fact that it dragged on so long, no one quite knew. Even Woj. It was a very, very bizarre night, I will say.
When Woj doesn't know what's going on, there's something going wrong. It wasn't a Woj bomb. It was like a Woj, sinkhole. Like he had no clue what was happening. And that's when you start to lose hope and you're like, this may not be good because Woj and Shams doesn't know what's going on. And I think that's the hard part. Like, it's been almost an entire day, and I don't think we're still clear with what the plan is and where things are going. So that's what makes it kind of disheartening.
Yeah, but look forward to tonight, unpacking it all. We're going to go through every detail, take questions from the chat, throw your reactions and feelings out there. But yeah, I could see along the lines of their plan. But the first thing that sort of surprised me was, when they took Ousmane Dieng, I knew, although it wasn't reported, I knew that wasn't our selection. We hardly even worked him out, or there wasn't any buzz. And I don't think he's a Tom Thibodeau, Leon Rose kind of selection. So firstly, I'll ask you, did you feel like something was up? the moment we took Jiang.
Well, almost instantly, when we made that pick, you started hearing almost instantaneous feedback that this is not a player that's going to be sticking around with the team, that there might be some trades coming on. And then you start to hear people saying, oh, this is very similar to what's been happening the last couple of years in terms of Leon Rose drafts, that there might be some maneuvering, some tinkering, if for anything, like we may not necessarily always do make the best moves, but we're always active that night. So there's always the hope there's gonna be something that's happening. There's gonna be something that's gonna be a grand slam, a home run. But it just got worse and more confusing. It got more confusing and more confusing, and it makes you really think, like, what was the plan going in that night?
Yep.
I can't tell you what it was.
Yeah, so straight after that, then my first thoughts were, okay, I knew OKC were 12, the team below us, and I knew they had picked 30 after that as well. I thought, okay, maybe we've traded out of the 11 to get 12 and 30. Then it was announced that we didn't have 12. Then I thought, okay, we're really, this is getting in really deep. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what is happening here now? We're picking much, much later. And to the great comment, Almighty Finesse says, it does sound like maybe Johnny Davis was their guy, and then once he was gone, Adrian Griffin Jr., that was surprising. I thought the Knicks would be interested in him, but maybe the medicals or something, because he's a CAA client. So that was the first surprise, that to have him on the board and the Knicks not be interested in taking him. That was the first shock to me.
Well, that's what's scary, CT, is that if Johnny Davis was the guy, and this is not an original point, this is part of the commentary that's been happening, for the past, ever since the end of the draft. If Johnny Davis was the guy, why not be a little bit more aggressive, particularly because you're one pick away? And that's, I think that's part of what's making Knicks fans, and myself included, so upset, is there's a tendency, are we getting fixated on one guy and not being, if that's the guy we want, why not be more aggressive, more assertive in terms of making sure to skip the team before you, to skip, if you're at 11 and your guy's being chosen at 10, skip, like find a way to get to 9, find a way to get to 8. If you also know that Jaden Ivey, that's a pipe dream, it's not going to be possible to jump up to number 4. There were plenty of teams trying to make moves to get up to the top 8, top 7, so that's the other thing that's kind of disappointing. What were you going to do to get your guy?
Yeah, and also that is the one possibility. Maybe EJ, that they were really heavily leaning towards not making a pick at all, even before the draft, for the salary cap purposes. Maybe they got a word from Brunson late in the piece, or maybe they've known for quite a while, and their approach has been not to let that out and to not let any other team know until they're at 11, and then to try to trade back for future picks, to not make a selection at all. That's sort of getting pretty deep, but it does seem like they've been heavily trying to play the salary cap maneuver for quite a bit.
That's also scary though, because it's another one of those examples, and we've been a Knicks fan for a while. The we're going to sign X player, we're going to sign this player, we're going to sign this player. It's been happening for years, and it's been rare we've gotten the player that's been talked about for 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. It's hardly ever happened, and so my fear is this is going to be another LeBron situation where LeBron comes to Connecticut to announce that he's going to Miami. There's going to be another situation where, we hire Jalen Brunson's dad and he ends up back in Dallas, and it was all for what? To, go back, 3 seasons ago, we were guaranteed to get KD and Kyrie. Not that in retrospect, maybe it was a blessing we didn't get them, but all of these guarantees of this is definitely going to happen. We're making moves. We're guaranteed to get it. It doesn't happen that way for us for some reason. So I'm concerned if the salary cap is guaranteed for Jalen Brunson, and we're not sure if 1, he's the answer, or 2, like we're definitely going to get him.
Yep. And just to give my overall reaction, obviously it was initially disappointment, like I said, of wanting that new young talent to root for and welcome into this team. But then now I kind of understand, I'm starting to understand a bit more that perhaps this front office, Tom Thibodeau, perhaps they're really set on the young crop we already have and understand that we do have a lot of young assets with Obi, Deuce, Grimes, Quickly, RJ, Sims, and maybe Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose decided, hey, we've got the perfect amount of young talent, Rokas overseas, let's complement them with half of the veteran side of things. Let's clear up space for the free agency and not build through the draft quite at the moment, kick the can down the road a bit. Now, if that's the case, I can get behind that a little bit more. The fact that maybe they do really, really like and are heavily invested in the young players we have and feel like adding more young talent to that. And with Cam Reddish as well, I missed his name. Perhaps it's just the right amount of ingredients and adding more young talent to that signalizes that we're more doing the slower build rather than trying to complement the young players we currently have and give them enough minutes.
Well, that is something that we've talked about before on the show, that there's a point that they're going to hit where they can't use every single draft pick that they have. Even though Leon brought it up in his memo, his press beliefs to everyone about having 11 draft picks, there's no way we can make every single draft pick, and every single draft pick is going to stick around with the club. At some point, you have to start making decisions in terms of who's going to stay, who's going to go. That was even part of the talk before this draft, that, even though we had 2 picks initially before the start of the draft, both players may not necessarily have made the team because there are but so many slots. My concern is that we didn't really do that great in terms of our free agent signings last year or last offseason. And so the track record for the front office and their free agent signings is not as good as their track record in terms of drafting. And so this front office has a lot to prove to the fan base in terms of having confidence, feeling like I know what I feel confidence in Leon Rose. I feel confidence in World Wide West. And I think part of the panic that we're sensing with Knicks Nation, Knicks World, is there's a lack of confidence in what the front office decides to do. And I think this might be a make or break offseason for Leon Rose. I'm not saying anyone's getting fired. That's not my style. That's not what I do. But in terms of, Knicks fans feeling confidence and feeling reassured, you're starting to sense that that's falling apart in larger and larger numbers.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's snowballing to the point where, okay, and we're going to talk about this more tonight. It seems like their future and shift is all on free agency now. And we've had a few free agencies where we haven't got big names. We've struck out. And it's really, this could be the final one. If we don't get Brunson, if we don't get Kyrie Irving, if we don't get somebody of a veteran presence that they're trying to get, and they're left at the altar again after clearing cap space, I mean, that just signalizes that that maybe the connections they have aren't as strong around the league. Maybe the word they're getting, they're just being used for leverage again, or something. And you're right. Who knows where they're going to get fired eventually soon, but they are putting themselves in a corner where it's okay. Well, you are CAA, you've got connections to Jalen Brunson, you've hired his father now, you're clearing space. It's like the whole league now knows, it's all over Twitter. They've basically shown the whole world what their next move is by trading out of this draft. They're showing everybody. But maybe they have something up their sleeve, maybe DeJounte Murray, maybe something we don't yet know. Let's wait for free agency. But yeah, they are certainly, the clock's well and truly ticking.
Yeah, and the thing is too, is you don't want hope to become, you don't want the hope that existed a couple of years ago with Leon, the excitement that people had with Leon, to become frustration, and then you become a laughingstock in the league. I definitely remember when Phil Jackson was hired, there was excitement. There was and even though he had never done the job before, there was genuine excitement. There was the hope that he could translate his coaching experience into being the president of the Knicks and doing such a great job and revitalizing the team. And then slowly but surely that got eroded. The more we heard about the triangle, the more there were questionable decisions, the more he seemed distant and away from the job and not interested in the job. It slowly went from excitement to frustration to anger. And then, we had to deal with this idea of, okay, we have too many coaches. There was a lack of clarity there. You don't want that. If you're Leon Rose, you don't want that same thing to happen to you and your front office. And the clock is starting to tick. where if you're on Knicks Twitter, if you're watching podcasts, if you're on YouTube, you're starting to Stephen A. Smith. You're starting to see, people are starting to question: is Leon Rose up to the job of being the leader of this organization? And you don't want people to do that. You want people to have full confidence in your ability to turn the organization around, and it's starting to become question time.
Yep, and it's just showing to me now. It's absolutely definitive that this front office's strategy is to play the name and the veteran route. We got Leon Rose, we got Worldwide West, Tom Thibodeau. They're not doing any slower rebuild. It's pretty clear to me now. They're brought in here, Worldwide West, for his connections, and Leon Rose, part of the agent world, and and in hiring Tom Thibodeau and in keeping him and extending him into his 5th year. To me, it shows now, okay, they've chosen their direction. There's no debating now whether they're going to build through the draft or whether they're going to go for a veteran team. And it was evident, it was clear to see at the end of last season, we were mathematically almost out of the play-in, but their decision was to still push for the play-in, play Alec Burks. Obi was still not getting enough minutes. Cam Reddish was still not getting enough minutes. So now it's very, very clear they've revealed their cards to me now that, okay, they are going for that win now route.
Is it? But here's a question for you, CT. Is it even worth it? Because I asked this question during one of our earlier podcasts in the middle of the season. We're not. Sorry, Knicks world. I love the Knicks. I'm diehard. Ask my family. Are we better than Philadelphia? Are we better than Milwaukee? Are we better than Chicago? Are we better than Miami? Are we better than Boston? And that's part of the game. The game is to be not just make the playoffs, but to be a contender. I'm not satisfied with just trying to make the play-in, because at what point do you then have a plan to become better than Philadelphia, to become better than Boston, to become better than Miami? That's what's concerning to me, is that if we're in this win now mode, there's no move we could have made last night. There's no free agent we can sign this off season that's going to make us better than the top 6 or 7 teams, maybe even 8 teams in the East. And so that's what's kind of concerning to me about what Leon's philosophy might be, what Thibodeau's philosophy might be, is it's a path to mediocrity.
Yep, completely agree with you. I've been saying forever now that I don't feel like now's the right window. Let's say we landed a big fish in Donovan. We landed someone of that age. Now, someone like Brunson, SGA, I feel like they've got enough years, where we can still build around them for the longer term with RJ. For Donovan, you'd have to give up so much that your roster wouldn't be on the level that it needs to be to compete with a Giannis, compete with these guys in this window as well. So my preference, number one, is to build through the draft. And I'm not saying it needs to be a 10-year slow Philadelphia situation, but just keep adding young talent and then seeing which ones pop. Trading out, the most disappointing thing, and the chat's been on point, is that the salary dump situation and these picks, and we're going to get into it a bit more as I bring up the graphic in terms of exactly what the moves were, and then all the pick protections with Jake Fisher. But yeah, to use to get out of the 11th spot, to shed Kemba's salary, but to not take back a pick at least around the the first round, for the future. Obviously it was salary motivated, but you are losing a significant piece, significant value.
And someone mentioned this in the chat, and we can't forget it. And I want to shout out who it was who made this comment. And I will shout you out in a second. Last night wasn't the only time we lost an asset. When we traded for Cam, and when the Kevin Knox deal, we also traded away a first round pick. So that's concerning. Like these assets that Leon Rose has been talking about how important they are. They're being used to correct mistakes that the same front office that's saying, hey, look at the job that we did. We did a great job collecting assets. but they're using the same assets to correct mistakes that front office made. You know, you listen. No one's going to be perfect in terms of draft picks or free agent signings, but you can't be using your assets to correct really bad mistakes that you made. Kemba, like, I'm not a GM, but when was the last time he played a full 82 game season? Like, what's the last time he played a 70 game season? So to have to use a draft asset to get rid of that contract, that's not good. That's not good.
Yep. Yeah, and he was a marquee sort of signing. The year before, just less than a year. I mean, that's not showing a good impression in terms of, okay, now they want to clear a space, but why did you sign all these movable deals as well? So yeah, it's showing to me a bit of an inexperience with this front office. But EJ, I just wanted to say, I'm not sure if others are hearing. I'm getting a little bit of static, just from either the microphone or possibly the Wi-Fi.
Is that on my end?
It might be. Yeah. Can you hear it?
All right. I can't hear it, but let me fix this up. This is live YouTube, so sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Maybe unplug.
All right, let me try to unplug it.
If the chat can let me know if they're also hearing a little bit of static. It's only when you speak. It's otherwise I'm not hearing it.
All right. How about now?
Yep. It's still there a bit.
All right. Let me unplug this mic then.
John can hear it. Yeah. Darren hears it. Yeah. Lynn hears it. Yep. Now you're just muted, but there's no static. Yeah, just bear with us, everybody. We'll get this sorted, and then we'll keep rocking. Yeah, we're going to go through all the moves, all the picks that were made, and then also, yeah, my thoughts on these picks that may not be worth too much as well down the road. That all indications are that they're going to be traded. These picks. But yeah, appreciate everyone in the chat. 007, yeah, apologies for yesterday. It got late in the piece. We're still coming to terms with what went down. But yeah, I plan to do the show tonight, which is why I pulled the pin last night. But yeah, everything's all good.
How does it sound now?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, great. Sorry about that, everyone.
No, you're good. But yeah, let's just touch on, firstly, what the Knicks did. And it took a while. All the beat writers, everyone took a stab at getting it order by order. But we obviously traded the 11th pick to OKC.
Mm-hmm.
OKC trades 3 first, a Denver, a Detroit, Washington to us. Then we traded the 23 Denver and 4 seconds to Charlotte for the 13th pick, which was Jalen Duren. And then we traded that and Kemba to Detroit with Jalen Duren, Kemba. And for Milwaukee, we got back Milwaukee's 25th first. And then we traded the 11 Kemba, 4 seconds, and we get 3 future firsts as well. So what do you make of all this? Please try to help me in the chat understand what do you see in terms of value with these picks and what the Knicks intend to do with them?
Honestly, I don't want to be negative, man. And I know normally when I'm on with Berman, he'll make fun of me and I'll be like, dude, you're so negative.
Now give it to us straight.
I don't know if they know. I don't know if the front office knows. I don't know if, and we asked this, we spoke about this early in the season as well, that is the front office on the same page? It's felt like the last season, the last 2 seasons, there's what Tom wants to do. There's what Coach Thibodeau wants to do. There's what Leon, I don't know what Leon wants to do. There's the Brock Aller style of management. There's Worldwide West, and even Mark Berman reported that there may have been some friction in between World Wide West and Tom Thibodeau. It doesn't seem like there's a clear, coherent vision. So in terms of these draft picks and moving back, I think this might be to set up for clearing cap space for another free agent signing. But if that were the move, why not have preserved some cap space or more cap maneuverability last offseason? You know, like
Yep.
why sign Kemba to a contract that you've now had to attach draft capital to get rid of his contract? What happens to Nerlens Noel? You know, like what will we have to use to get rid of his contract? What happens to Evan Fournier? What will we have to give up to get rid of his contract? And that's what's concerning. It's not clear. It's great to have additional draft picks. Yes, it's great, but I don't know if there's a uniform vision. That's what's scary.
Yep. It goes back to the front office. And we talked about this when they hired Gerson Rosas. To me, there's just way too many guys in this front office, and it shows the inexperience for me at the top.
Yeah.
With Dole and with Leon. You know, he didn't learn a lesson to me after Phil Jackson, an amateur president who'd never been in that role before. Then he hires Leon, who hasn't had a front office experience, and to be a president, to make the decisions, make the call. And I understand why they kept Scott Perry because of his experience. But to me, it's so far it's not reflecting in a front office that looks like they're experienced, you know. And then why would they need to bring in Gerson Rosas, another guy, you know, maybe to support Leon? Maybe Dolan realized, okay, Leon is struggling a bit, and we need a fallback, or we need another guy, another advisor.
But if you're Gerson Rosas and you're not in the position, you don't have the title to supersede what Leon is doing, that doesn't solve the problem. If Leon is the problem, but Gerson Rosas doesn't have the title or the position or the pay, that indicates like, listen, guy, like you should listen to me. That's another issue. Like, I mean, think about it. I forgot to mention Scott Perry. I mean, we have so many guys who are in this position. And at first I think we were excited about it. I was excited about it, but you're right. Like, you know, and we're in a league now with some really smart GMs, with some really smart basketball presidents. And, you know, as a fan, I'm now concerned every time Leon makes a call or Scott Perry makes a call, they're not the smartest person on that call. They're not the most experienced person on that call. If they're calling Sam Presti, like, dude, like Sam Presti is gonna win that deal. Like if you're calling Masai Ujiri, Masai is gonna win that call. And look at Detroit last night. Detroit got better based upon some of our moves. That's concerning, dude.
That's what I've been saying all throughout the season, EJ and chat. The East is getting so much more stronger. This draft last night, the East was strong this year, but teams like Detroit, I mean, if you're a fan, you have to be so happy and excited about their future now. Generational talent.
Yeah.
And we understand the Knicks' vision. We're assuming Brunson is their key target. And I want to ask you about, are you worried about a tampering thing? As the chat is bringing that up. Yeah, El Tigrasso and some other people are, you know, the Knicks were there in the playoff series there to see Jalen Brunson play. They hired his father. Let's say he is their main signing. You know, would the NBA delve into that? I mean, Leon Rose used to be his agent. Leon Rose negotiated the contract that Jalen Brunson is currently on.
Yeah. You know what? You know what would be the ultimate Knicksian thing is Jalen Brunson would re-sign with the Mavericks, and we would still get hit with the tampering charges. That would be the ultimate. That would be the ultimate Knicksian thing. Like, I'm not saying I want that to happen, but I mean, it would be comical. But it would also indicate, like, you know, there is an experience in this front office, and you know, the East is in a very awkward place right now. We don't know what's happening with the Nets. The Nets might be an incredibly different team next year, but you know, when Milwaukee ages out, Detroit's going to be good. Charlotte has the possibility of moving from the bottom of the East towards the top of the East. Atlanta can be a move or two away from becoming really good. So I don't know if our front office has that vision, that understanding of not only do you have to improve your team, you have to improve your team relative to where the league is going. And that's always been my concern with the Knicks is that I don't know if we have the horses in the front office to understand the lay of the land in that way. And just one quick point about that. Um, I hear people say this all the time, and I'm going to steal this from Don LaGreca from the Michael K show. There is no cap on your front office. There's a cap for your roster, but there's no cap for the front office.
Yep.
If Leon does not make it, if Leon is forced to resign or he's fired this season, at the end of the season or next season, we have to spend as much money possible to get a surefire, respectable person who knows what they're doing. And I don't care how much it costs because I'm not paying for it, but you have to make sure that you pay for an experienced front office.
Here's what I want to add as well. James Dolan, his number one strength is his weakness. He's way too loyal.
Yeah.
He's way too loyal. He'll correct mistakes, he'll fire people, but then the subsequent move is to hire someone else he's friendly with or in bed with, with the CAA. When he hired Phil, I was like, okay, a guy with a resume, we all know with the coaching situation, but to repeat a sort of similar mistake and to hire another agent. I understand the agent was the sexy thing at the point with Rob Pelinka and some other people, but we need a basketball head, right? A guy who's not going to be outsmarted, knows the game, a Jerry West, a Troy Weaver, Toronto, Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri. I mean, the New York Knicks could be a powerhouse with our wealth, our fan base, and a smart front office. We would have so much leverage around the league.
Yeah.
But again, this seems like just another toy for James Dolan in terms of it's bringing in money. He's got other interests. The Rangers are doing well.
The Rangers are really doing well. Yeah.
It's like okay, like how serious am I going to get about the New York Knicks? With if my legacy with the New York Knicks, does he really want to bring a championship to the New York Knicks? Rather than just make money.
Hey, and you know what, CT too as well. The other. You're right. He seems to be a very loyal guy when it comes to the basketball front. Like going back to the days of Isaiah Thomas. Like Isaiah had a couple of cups of coffee with the Knicks in terms of like power. The problem is, and I saw someone say this in the chat, is that the league is a very different league. If you are not smart, if you're not, cutthroat in terms of knowing the players you want. Listen, Rob Pelinka, he seems to be doing a great job. But listen, I could be GM of the Lakers if I have LeBron James. You're going to be a relatively good team with LeBron James on your squad. But we also see with Rob Pelinka, the Lakers have struggled the last couple of seasons putting a team around LeBron as he ages. So my frustration with the team has always been we try to copy the wrong organizations. We copy the wrong models. We try to do the whole Miami Heat 2010, super club, the Beatles, the Heatles. No, like you have to follow Golden State, follow Boston. Like you need Danny Ainge. You need someone who knows and understands and is forward thinking in terms of building a team. And unfortunately, in basketball, you can't do it quickly.
Yep.
That's not how the league is anymore. Even Golden State had to have a down period before it won its championship again. But it capitalized on it. It capitalized on it because Joe Lacob, they know what they're doing out there. And I don't know if we can say that definitively with the Knicks front office.
Yeah, and I'll touch on the coaching with the trend of the Emu Udokas, the great coach out in Memphis. My memory, but yeah, that's the trend too. And we're going. Obviously, we made the commitment to Tom Thibodeau, but my only solace now is that this is a ticking situation.
Mm-hmm.
If results don't come in the next year or two, James Dolan has shown that he's willing to cut bait. But then what does he do next? That's the thing. We never changed the philosophy. That's why we've been bad for 20 years.
Yeah.
If we had just built it a bit more patiently and slower, it wouldn't have taken 20 years for us to taste some success, right? We should have opened the doors to people not within our connection, give the keys to the most, best candidate, best basketball mind, and then go from there. It's leading us to Jalen Brunson. If that's the case, then, I said earlier throughout the season when the buzz started happening that Jalen's age, and his play, would I'd welcome that on the team. I still like Emmanuel quickly, but that was when I thought his salary was around the 18 to 20 mil range. Now, I know the salary is going up, but if it is going to cost $25 million, let's say the end goal is us signing Brunson. I want to get your thoughts on what would that mean for you?
What are we doing with Julius? I think the Brunson move is my evaluation of a possible Brunson move is based upon what we do with Julius. Julius is he had a great season last season, the season before. He had a questionable season this season. He has talent. He's a talented guy, but he also represents a different time frame than if we're building the team around Obi, RJ, quickly, Grimes, Deuce. It's two different timelines. Jalen Brunson, the advantage of signing Jalen Brunson is that he's a player in the league. He belongs in the league. He belongs. If you can play next to Luka and still demonstrate that you can be a leader on a team, you could be a quality signing. I'm not necessarily as concerned as some of the fans are with signing Jalen. I'm concerned with what moves do you make after you sign Jalen. Are you able to trade Julius for another piece? Because if we sign Jalen, we still need minutes, lots of minutes for Obi to develop. We still need minutes for Cam. We still need to answer the question of what are we going to do with Evan Fournier. So,
yep.
I'm not necessarily mad. I wouldn't be mad at Jalen Brunson because he's not over 30, and this is his first major contract, which fits in with the timeline of an RJ. But I'm concerned about those additional moves after Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, I agree. If we cleared up a lot of the veterans, let's say we moved on from Julius, Fournier, Burks, and we built around RJ, Brunson, Cam, and a younger crew, Obi, quickly. That to me, that makes a lot more sense. But then it's sort of counterproductive why you need to pay Brunson that much. You could build slower with the quickly through the draft as well. But we have a super chat I want to touch on, and I appreciate you, Justin DW, in the building and the whole chat as well. EJ, I'll get you to touch on this. It's a great point.
Mm-hmm. So shout out to Justin. He says it's been a lot of overreactions from fans. You have to play this smart. No one at 11 was going to make us great. Ivy was gone and they tried, but now it's about letting the young guys run this year. Justin, I want you to send that message, direct message Tom Thibodeau, direct message Leon Rose, just to remind them you're absolutely right. There really wasn't, and that's the thing about teams like the Knicks. Like if you're not too bad of a team, which they really weren't, especially by the end of the season, they weren't a horrible team. But they're also not in the upper echelon of the East, nor are they on the upper echelon of the entire league. That's when you have a lot of moves you have to make. So you're right. Last night, and that's why I'm not really mad. I think, and CT and I were talking about this before, we were confused by the moves last night. There are a lot of moves they have to make. And it's just now, I think my focus is now, do we have the right stakeholders in place to make that moves? Is Tom Thibodeau the right coach for the development of Obi, Grimes, Deuce, RJ? Is he the right development coach? Is it the right front office? I'm starting to lean more towards, I don't necessarily trust the front office. I don't necessarily trust the coach to be the development coach.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, and that's why you're seeing, Justin, EJ, some overreaction. It's been a build-up of fans being, not liking what they've been seeing for a little bit now. It wasn't just last night. Last night was sort of a cherry on top, from what I can understand among fans. It's that lack of trust, and it's like, okay, it's underwhelming now that they're putting all their eggs in free agency again after we've been let down. And then it seems like who's at the top of the list? Jalen Brunson. Okay, I can understand how some fans feel underwhelmed, but I do understand your point. You know, you do make that point, that is, if that's their vision and they didn't see someone making a difference at 11, you know, then kicking the can down the road, you know, from a financial flexibility is prudent. One thing I can say is we've not been too reckless with picks. You know, it started with Phil Jackson, Steve Mills. We've been a player every free agency and draft night because we have some picks to trade. But okay, what are we trading them for? You know, it seems like we're building and building this war chest, but who's going to eventually going to want to come here now? I'm glad, you know, things over in Brooklyn aren't going so well. Ben Simmons, got to mention it. Got Ben Simmons, Harden, Kyrie, KD. They hijacked the organization. Now they're sort of left high and dry.
And that's a shame too. I mean, Sean Marks and Kenny Atkinson, they were making some. I mean, you could see some real growth prior to, you know, Kyrie and KD coming aboard. And I know I'm gonna assume this, but you have some special love for Sean Marks, I think, maybe. But at the same time, that's also what happens when you don't. I'm not a chef, but if you have me run a kitchen in your restaurant, you're gonna go out of business soon. You need the right people in charge of the right business. So, you know, Golden State, Steph is Steph. He cooks on the court. Kerr knows how to, you know, move his pieces. Joe Lacob and his front office, they know exactly what they're doing in terms of moves and being willing to accept the circumstances that are in front of them. So if Steph and Clay are going to be out for a season, we will, you know, we'll suffer through it and we'll get a high draft pick and we'll be okay with it. But here's the difference. When you have an organization that's open and transparent with their fan base, it buys you confidence, it buys you trust. And right now, the Knicks front office, the Knicks, you know, James Dolan, they don't have the confidence or trust of Knicks fans. So you can't even really leverage anything. So even if you do make a mistake, Knicks fan will be hypercritical, will be more critical of your mistakes because you don't have any trust or confidence that you've given them, so for them to feel that sense of confidence in you. If Sam Presti makes a mistake, I mean, Sam Presti will never lose his job in OKC. That's how much capital he's built up. And KD doesn't play there anymore. James Harden doesn't play there anymore. Russell Westbrook doesn't play there anymore. But there's something about building trust with your fan base. And the front office, the president of the Knicks, and the owner, they haven't done that the past 30 years. And yeah, so Knicks fans are going to be more critical if you make a perceived mistake.
Yeah, definitely. You know, a lot of us have been fans for over 20, 30 years or more as well. And it's getting to the point now, okay, like we're a little bit torn between, okay, we want success sooner than later, but we also know that we don't want to wreck the future and microwave the thing, because then we're back to square one. And we have the best young core I think we've had in a few decades. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of, and it looks like we're going to keep Mitch. Before we get into the other moves on draft night, you know, we'll pivot a little bit towards, you know, clearing space and everything. But with Mitch, what are your thoughts on the recent news that it's looking like it's more of a done deal? And of course, nothing's done until it's done. But yeah, the rumors are getting louder.
It would be a positive step, you know. Mitch is one of those players where he's actually a success. He's a success in terms of he's one of those things the front office can say, like, hey, we've invested in terms of development. You know, there are some things that Mitch has to work on, the free throws, developing like an offensive move set. You know, it's great to see those videos where he's shooting threes and dribbling from half court. Those are great, but does it translate in game? The maturity issues, and Berman has spoken about that before. Those are still an issue. You want players to be mature, especially if you're going to be a younger team. But I like when we have players that other teams want. And I like having players that we want to resign. That means that you're doing something right. For as much as I knock the front office, for as much as I'll knock Tom Thibodeau, if you have a player that you're able to resign, it means that you see something in them. And that eventually can be a commodity down the road. They can work, they can play for you, they can develop even further. and they might be a part of your core, but they also might be something that down the line can help bring us closer to where we might want to be. So if Mitch is resigning, I'll be happy about it. But it also is contingent once again upon what do we do with Julius.
Yep, completely agree with Mitch. It's about time we break that Charlie Ward curse and keep the
1999.
guy. And I'm not the biggest fan of Mitch's whole game, but it just makes business sense to keep him. You could always try to trade him later. And I love the point you made about teams still interested in him. And that shows that there is upside, with a proper point guard. And there's no doubt Mitch's game could be more expanded. Who knows whether he'll ever do it, but a point guard needs to look for him more. There's situations where he's under the hoop and he's been ignored, with Julius, with RJ. And I understand he had a legit gripe as well. Now it's up to him. If he gets the bag, I hope he stays healthy, because then there'll be more buzz if he doesn't as well. But, I like the fact that, we can continue to build this young core. And I don't know if it's by fate, but if you look at all the competitors, it looks like they're dwindled, because Dallas made the move for Christian Wood.
Yeah.
The chat's on point. Detroit have made their swing and they've got Jalen Duren. So two of the key suitors for Mitch are now out of the market. So, and Phoenix, it looks like they're going to sign and trade DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah. And yeah, Phoenix. So like that might even reset the market for Mitch and make it a reasonable contract. Which my fear is always overpay. There are certain players you can overpay for. If you're overpaying for a guard, a scoring heavy guard, point guard, you have to, because that's where the league is. But overpaying for a traditional big who doesn't necessarily have an expansive outside game, that's always where you have to be careful. I mean, and that's where Phoenix is in terms of DeAndre Ayton and not wanting to overpay for him. So, it's very rare that things actually break for the Knicks, but this might actually be a moment where things are actually breaking right, and we don't necessarily have to overpay for Mitch. But you are right. Hope if it's Jalen and Mitch, could it be that Jalen helps to improve and unlock certain things in Mitch? Because there were games Mitch is standing under the basket and it's like, dude, like that's just not right. He just hustled and got you, the board, and he blocked a shot. You have to reward the big man. Reward the big man for the hard work.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about Mitch. And he put on weight. He came into the season with that extra bulk. It seemed like it was helping him out. And then he regressed a little. Then it seems like he shed, and he talked about it openly. He shed some weight. And then that's when I think he played some of his best ball this season. And if we eventually get to what we want to do, which is play up and down, play faster, if we do move on from Julius, would you like to see a leaner Mitch, with the foot injuries and things, or would you think that he needs to remain big and establish that dominance?
That's a good question. That's a really, really good question. I really think that the key to that question is the Randall, because Randall and Mitch in the block, and with RJ out on the wing, whose 3-point shooting last year was somewhat suspect, it clogs the lane. And RJ was definitely trying to muscle his way into the lane, and then you have Julius doing the same thing, and Mitch is standing there. You can't have 3 core players hogging that paint. So if we do move to a Obi Mitch combination, it does open up the court a little bit more. So in terms of gaining weight, Tom Thibodeau is going to want him to be his primary defender. And for as much as we criticize Julius is a pretty damn good rebounder. So you're going to need Mitch to pick up a lot of what Julius, who's not there anymore, to do. So he might have to put on some of that weight again.
Yeah, great points. I think just establish a happy median type weight, and see that a weight that he feels comfortable playing with, because there's no doubt the key part of his strength was the offensive rebounds and just being that beast down there. And as the league starts to go smaller, that could be our advantage. He is reasonably fleet of foot still on the defensive end, being able to shut down dribble penetration, but also just, if he can be that guy that pulls in 12, 13, 15 offensive rebounds a game, maybe maybe 5 of them offensively. I mean, that does give us a lot with a proper point guard that we haven't had in a while. And we'll talk a little bit more about the point guard, but it's time to talk a little bit more about the rest of draft night and the moves, ladies and gents. Thanks for rocking with us. Hit that like button. And so, yeah, we see the protections. We chop that up. We understand that probably hardly any of them are going to convey, in my opinion, and that it looks like they're going to be used in a trade down the line. So that's what the Knicks' vision has been. But we did make the 42nd selection as well, and we made an undrafted selection, which I'm very high on. I want to talk to everybody why. But as you see, ladies and gents, we made the 42nd pick. Shout out to friend of the show, shotquality.com, Simon out there. He was tweeting great all night about, in the second round, as each team was on the board, he was talking about which player were the best fit at that selection. He had Trevor Keels, number 1, as the best fit for the New York Knicks at the 42nd pick, and the Knicks made that pick as well. So I like this. In my reasoning why the Knicks made this pick is because the Knicks were dead last. They were 30th in positional versatility. That means that the New York Knicks roster plays mostly one position only.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we get in Trevor Keels? He was a freshman as well. He was a 5-star recruit. Incredible size. He's 6'4", but size in terms of bulk and frame. He has a 6'7" wingspan. So his strengths are his size and his strength, and he's a secondary playmaker as well. He proved this season in his freshman season that he can handle the rock. He can make great reads out of the pick and roll as well. So that relieves a lot of stress off the ball handler.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's going to do is he loves to drive. He drives all the way to the cup with his huge frame. Defenders can't shut him off. If he gets that straight line drive, he's just too big. And he's shown finishes. He can finish strong with contact, as you see in the highlights. He has shooting upside. Now he was a lights out shooter in high school, which was what I'm hearing. But he had a down shooting year in his first year. He only shot 31% from 3, but he shot 52% from 2 from the mid range, which is great. But unfortunately, he shot 67% from the line. But a lot of scouts, he does project to have shooting upside because he shot so well in high school. And to be that catch and shoot guy in the corner, at least he projects like he's going to be a good shooter in that. And then I go back to the positional versatility on D. I feel like, once he matures, he can guard possibly 2 to 4 in the league because he's so strong and so big. So I think that's a good fit for the Knicks. And he's only 18 years old. The 2 pickups we made were only 18 years old. So there's upside with that. Now, whether he makes the roster, I think he probably will. Whether he gets minutes, all remains to be seen. But I like his upside at 18 years old. And I'm pretty excited about this pick because he's a Swiss Army knife, and he addresses that need that the Knicks have in terms of being able to guard on the perimeter switch like Tom Thibodeau likes. And just a stocky frame, a big strong guy, which is the Knicks have been lacking. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Listen, I mean, I can't say that I've seen a lot of Trevor Keels, but I can definitely say this in terms of positionless basketball. That was one of the big frustrations last year, is seeing the Knicks try to defend and just like, for example, Evan Fournier, just people just blowing by him and just getting picked up on the switch. That was constantly frustrating. So for every night you would have 20 or 30 or possibly the 40-point game during the season, you just knew that he was also giving up a lot of points when he was the primary defender. So having, moving into the athletic positionless basketball, that is something that with Trevor Keels, that does excite me, the possibility of that. And, again, like as much as I've been talking about the front office, for them to have the foresight to make that investment, that is a good sign. That really is a good sign.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that the roster doesn't have. If they were going to make a pick, I was very, very skeptical. I thought they would trade out of this pick as well, just for the roster spot, and things are pretty stacked. But the fact that they made the selection based on fit and need, again, his secondary playmaking is quite nice. I've seen in the pick and roll, he can make excellent reads, which is good from a shooting guard to be able to handle the rock, make the right reads, play. He can spot up and shoot. Got the upside as well. You know, and he projects to be able to be helpful on D as well, and the size and everything. Yeah, I think I'll give this pick a B, a solid B, based on initial reactions as well. So give us grades for this pick at 42, ladies and gentlemen. You know, what's interesting is he's a freshman, EJ. That bucks the trend a little bit. The Knicks have liked to select guys like Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride, Obi, these guys that have been in college a few years. So to me, this reeks of a more Walt Perrin kind of swing. I think he had a little bit of say in this.
Yeah, what's cool about it too is like the 18-year-old. These are one of these moves, and I saw someone say in the chat he might possibly, if he doesn't make the main squad, go into the G League. Investing in players who have upside, that's always something that's really good, to have that kind of player who you can get him in your system and try to grow him. And I will say, to a certain extent, this is something that we haven't seen from other versions of the Knicks organization. You know, how many times did Phil Jackson, when he was president of the team, use the D League at the time, and make that like a feeder system for the team? And that's one of the things that good organizations do is that they have a connection between their G League team as well as their main squad. So if you think of, for example, someone like Gary Payton II, you know, and building players who, you know, sometimes are overlooked or undrafted, or who are lower draft picks, it does excite me that the Knicks, at least from this standpoint, didn't totally pass the buck and say, okay, we're not going to invest in some possible picks this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they believe in his shooting ability as well. The New York Knicks do need more shooters as well.
Yeah.
I don't think shooting just goes away. He had a down year in his freshman year, but again, it was projected to be one of his main strengths. His shooting in high school was incredible from what's been said as well. So yeah, everyone appreciate it. Chat is buzzing. Throw more questions at us. But and like Ranrock says, the next edition we're about to touch on, Jean Montero, it changed the perspective of the night for me. Like I said in the show yesterday, I've been high on Montero, you know, all throughout the draft process, and I felt like he's a first round talent. He was projected just 4 months ago. He was mocked to the Knicks in 11th by Rafael Barlow, who's an incredible international scout, believes in what he saw in Jean Montero. He saw him in the Basketball Without Borders as well. So, and he's a point guard as well. So probably the biggest news of the night to me, which happened very, very late. Most people went to sleep. I sort of was lingering around and thought, okay, what are the Knicks going to do with so many good players undrafted? Which led us to Jean Montero, and how we landed him. I feel is that once a player that wants to go in the first round doesn't go in the first round, and then it gets past 40, I feel like him and his agent start to lean towards, let's go undrafted. Let's try to choose our destination. And he chooses the New York Knicks. They come to an agreement. He can see a situation where we don't have a clear-cut point guard at the moment, or the situation's a bit murky. So that's what I feel has led Jean Montero, you know, to the Knicks. And before I get into my thoughts a bit more, what do you know of Montero, and what do you make of this?
Well, I will say, you know, in our relationship, you've spoken a lot about Montero, and you did a podcast on, you did a show about Montero. Barlow has definitely talked up Montero a lot, and he's been making the rounds for like the last month before the draft, talking up Montero. And I definitely have to give a shout out to a Twitter follower, the Cooler. The Cooler's been talking about Montero for like the last 4 or 6 weeks, just constantly, like, and praying and hoping that Montero would be the guy. So to see him sign an undrafted contract, the 2-way contract, that to me is something it's exciting, especially when you pair that up with Rokas. So you have a few young players who, especially at the point guard position, the fact that we're actually trying to see if it's possible to if you're not going to be able to trade for one, but develop them. And especially this kid who there's been a lot of buzz about him, and especially his speed. That's one of those things that really excites me because the Knicks tend to play very slow. The speed factor for me is something that's really exciting. So, well, what are your thoughts, CT?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited as well. And I know the caller is as well. El Grasso makes the great point again, why he sort of slipped a little bit. It's a whole heap of things. I mean, he's a bit more unknown international prospect, chose the first season, the inaugural season of the Overtime Elite program, which is more, as it develops, it'll get better, but it's more of a glorified, high school scrimmage kind of thing where he's playing against younger guys. There's only 3 teams in the league. But, he looked after his family. He got 100K salary as well. And he obviously learned a lot. But John Montero comes with experience, is the first thing I'll say. He went pro at 16 years of age, playing in the second division in Spain as well, where he really got on people's radar. And Rafael Barlow saw him in 2020 at the Basketball Without Borders, where he was up against Josh Giddey. He was up against quite a few other names as well. And at that event, he was the MVP. He was the MVP of Basketball Without Borders. And Rafael Barlow told me then he looked like the best player on the court as well.
Yeah.
Now, his glaring weakness was his size at that point. He's a skinny boy, skinny kid. He's 6'1" without shoes, 6'2" with shoes, got a 6'5" wingspan. But what John Montero brings is first-round talent. And this is where it changed the night for me. We got him undrafted, but I could envision the situation going like this, that we traded the 11th pick to OKC. We got all those picks, and we got OKC's 30th pick, or we got a pick in the late 20s, and we took John Montero. So that changed the night for me. Now, I don't know what the future holds for Montero. I hope he sticks around, because I think he's going to have a great chance to be a great impact player in the league. And for me personally, from day one, he's already the first or second most complete point guard on this roster. When I say complete point guard, he's got a better floor game than Quickly does at the point guard spot as well. He's a true point guard. He's still 18 years of age as is today. His birthday is next week. So again, like Trevor Keels, he doesn't turn 19 until, some bit. He's a first round talent. Like I said, he was mocked to the Knicks at 11 4 months ago as well. So he was one of the biggest sliders in the draft. So for me, he has clear first-round talent. He's got speed. NBA comps could be, a floor could be Terry Rozier as well. He has the floor game of a Darius Garland, a Rondo light, and his ceiling could be a Trae Young light as well if everything projects as well. He's great feel for the game. He makes other players better. He makes the right pass. He's a high-level scorer as well. He's got deep range. His shot selection wasn't great, which didn't help his percentages at the Overtime Elite, but he's leading a team without other talent. He's taken all the shots. It was just a scrimmage situation for him as well. I really want to see him in an NBA environment with a more structured environment. I think his playmaking is going to be the skill set that shines. And Rafael Barlow dropped the link as well in the chat. But yeah, he did a nice a show where he actually it was like a month ago, he was in the gym with John Montero in Dallas. He was scrimmaging against NBA guys and other prospects, and his floor game, his passing stood out even more than anything else. He's got a high steal rate. He averaged something like 2 steals per 36 minutes. So he's a great on-ball defender in terms of being pesky. Now, off-ball, it's a little bit different with his size, not as strong. His biggest knock is his size of finishing at the rim. He's a pull-up scorer at the moment. How much weight he puts on, how strong he can get will dictate, I think, how great in the league he can be. But I think he'll definitely start putting on weight. He's in the weight room. He's putting up, shots. He's got a great motor. He's devoted to the game. Like I said, he's been pro since 16. I think he's hungry. And, like I said, I liken this to the Knicks picking up a late first-round pick like OKC and then making the pick there. So we got him undrafted. But, yeah, to me, this was the biggest win of the night, hands down. And like I said, in terms of pure point guard play, I'd put him ahead of Rokas. I'd put him ahead of Deuce in terms of ceiling. And I think his overall floor game as a point guard is more advanced than Quickly. Like you just see the highlights. He makes reads that Quickly is not in the position to make at this point.
There's that thing about, and especially the international game has changed in the last 20 years, where you're seeing a lot of international players who come almost better prepared for the league because they're playing in pro leagues. And because the college game, the American college game has changed drastically, really in the past 25 years, 26 years, where it's not necessarily as great as developing pro talent. So you're seeing these international players come in and they have a feel that's very different than American-born players that go through the American college system. So I'm excited to see more of him. I'm hoping to see him, hopefully in the summer league. I'm not sure if he's definitely going to be part of the summer league program, as well as Kiel, because the Basketball Without Borders is that it's really good because you get to see players compete with NBA level talent. And that's not something that you necessarily always see with college kids. So it would be interesting to see like how he pans out. And you're right. We sometimes have to remember big difference between the league now and the league 30 years ago is that players were coming out 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They were 3-year, 4-year college players. So they were coming out 21, 22. They already had more weight on them. They had more mature bodies. When you're talking about an 18-year-old kid, think about go back and find LeBron pictures from 2003 and compare them to now. He kind of looks like two different people. Carmelo, the same thing, these baby faces. And even Steph, who, we always talk about being very lean and slight. The body structure is not the same. And Clay, the same thing. So, again, for as much as we knocked some of the moves from last night or the confusing nature of last night, having some pieces that can grow within the organization, that is exciting. And I'm excited to see what Montero might become.
Yeah, you hit it. Yeah, both 18, like I said. And I'm just happy that for this aspect that the front office still is bringing in 2 young players and talent to add to what we got as well. Hopefully these guys make a huge impact and stick around. And we'll touch on some comments from the chat as well. The chat's on fire. And like Dirty Dancer says, Montero crushed your high schools in the Hoop Summit as well. He was the leading scorer in the Nike Hoop Summit in April as well. So, I'm seeing fans that don't know Jean's game so much. They just see undrafted guy. They think it's another Luca Vildoza situation. Like this kid's been pro for a long time, and his game is first round talent. There's a clear division for me. That's just my personal thoughts. I've been watching him quite a bit, and you can't teach feel for the game. Like the Knicks have lack guards with a feel for the game. This guy has hunger. Yeah. And I will drop a little bit of intel that I know about Jean. So in his interview, shout out again to Rafael Barlow, who interviewed him. Jean's mental strength and resolve is clear. So he got stuck in Spain at the start of COVID. The flights got cancelled and he was stuck in Spain as well. Here is a kid, less than 18 years of age, stuck in another country. He was unable to get out of there as well, but he's stuck with it. He signed with the Overtime Elite. It was an inaugural season. Again, it's going to be a tricky situation. I think all that contributed to his stock dropping. And like I said, once you get past 40, him and his agent might have just said, look, let's just can it and choose the Knicks. There's a deal behind the table where we can go to the Knicks or we could go to any team we want. Why get drafted? Why get drafted late in the second round? We were hoping to be a first round draft pick, but then after that, let's just go to where we can go, sign a 2-year, 2-way deal. And I think he's going to be at Summer League. I think he's going to get minutes, and he's probably going to come in with a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, and there's something you also said too that's definitely right. There's athleticism, but there's also basketball IQ. One of the things that I think was missing from the team this past season at times was IQ. And I don't mean the player. I mean basketball smarts. Like that ability to it's what Chris Paul has. and obviously Chris Paul, there aren't that many Chris Pauls walking around, but the ability to see a play before it happens, it's what Jason Kidd had. That's not something you can necessarily teach. It's just an innate gift and talent. And so if he has, and I'm definitely not comparing Montero to CP or J Kidd, but if there's a level of basketball intelligence, natural basketball intelligence that exists and that kid has it, you want that on your squad. You want that on your team because, especially in the point guard positions, because again, like it's sad, but we haven't had that lead point guard in God knows how long. So yeah, I am definitely going to be very excited about Summer League this summer to see what these two might add. I'm not sure. Do we know if Rokas is not coming over for Summer League, or is he still going to be international?
Great question. If you had to ask me, there's no clear word yet, but I'm hopeful Rokas will come. His season ended. They fell just short. They were in the finals against their rival, Real Madrid, I think, and Barcelona lost. They missed out. So the season's ended now, but it's been a long season for Rokas. The EuroLeague season only just ended a week or two ago. It goes a long way with a lot of games, but there's only 40-minute games. They don't go very long, and they distribute the minutes pretty well. So I could see Rokas being really keen. He's in his last interview, he's developed relationships with Deuce McBride and the assistant coach Dice Yoshimoto. They've been texting all throughout the season. So I could see with him wanting to stay in Europe next season, I could see him maybe wanting to just come down, experience Summer League again. That'd be off the chain for me. Like El Tigrasso says, I don't know if Obi will come, or Cam, but with Deuce, Jericho, Jean Montero, and Sims, and Trevor Keels, and whoever else we pick up, I think it's still worthwhile watching Summer League. I'll be excited.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would definitely be excited about that as well too. Especially because if this 2020, the 2023 draft is going to be really a big one. So if Thibodeau is moving towards, it depends if they're decided to move more towards a youth movement at some point in the season. Having those kids play together and really, like take a look at what Memphis did this year, and like those guys, I mean, are going to be a squad, and they're young. They're young, and I mean, they are going to be scary. There's something about players growing up together that's amazing. So if we can get the right pieces to grow up together, that's what you want.
Yep. And I'll highlight what Geraldine said too. As a Dookie, watched every game this year, and Trevor Keels is a dog, a good player, and he's going to surprise. Yeah, I think so too. For them to choose two guys, like I said, that didn't have multiple years in college, they really, really believe in their upside talent. And now, we've discussed the free agency and the vision, but to me, what's going to get this team to where we need it to go is development. These young players we currently have, we need to get the most out of them. The Obies, the Quickleys, the Reddishes, Mitchs, these two guys that we welcome in. It's time for the development staff to really make some of these guys become all-stars, or let them pop. Whatever we try to get from outside of the organization is outside noise now. We have talent in this roster, and what's coming up next season is what would be a win for me is these guys continuing to get better. So how do you see them being able to get better? And do you have that faith that these young players are going to continue to develop under this staff?
You know what? I can imagine every person in the chat. You know what it is. Like, we just need to say it. We're not winning a championship next year, but we can be okay with that. We can be okay with that. We should be okay with that if it's about development. So for me, it's like, and we can go player by player. Like, RJ, work on that game. Work on your right hand. Work on your right hand. Work on those free throws. Mitch, free throws. Like, if you were going to resign,
Yeah.
free throws. You know, like that's going to be a common. That's going to be
He's
a common
probably in the
thread.
gym shooting threes right now.
You know, that's and that's part of it. You know, and so like for Mitch, it's also maturity. Like, you know, work on your threes, but at the same time, work on those free throws as well too, because you know it got to a point last season where we started joking around, like, you know, RJ was demanding calls and wanting calls, and Julius wanting calls, but they would miss their free throws. They would always miss the front end of a back to back. So, you know, work on the right hand game. You know, if Julius is back with us next season, which I'm assuming he will be, work on your right, work on the free throws. And you know, we saw tape of him on social media, you know, really working out, and with Jericho Sims as well. And yeah, so we can really go player by player. And what's great about a young team is that there's always room for development, and the possibilities are endless. But you know, player by player, there are definitely things that I hope the development staff is working with them on right now, and they know better than I, way better than I, what they can do to grow as a team. Because ultimately, the more they grow as players, the more value they have, and you don't know what happens next after that. You know, can you take a fourth season RJ, and then all of a sudden, if he's worked on his right, does he become someone looks at and says, I want to play with him? Or does he reach the point where he's in possible all-star contention? You know, and that's a game changer, and it changes what could happen with the team. So but you know, part of it is their willingness to do it as well too.
Yep. Yeah, with RJ, it's that classic argument over skill and will.
Yeah.
Well, if you choose, you know, what do you value more, the will in a player or the skill? We've been seeing so many skillful players in the league that didn't achieve their potential, and then players with the will, like the Jimmy Butlers, they get the most out of themselves. I put RJ in the will category. He may never be the most skillful player on a team, probably not, but in terms of will, you know, I think I can see him being a winner in the league. Just that guy that loves the game, invests in it heavily. Everything else is secondary to him. You know, he wants to win. You could see that in the kid. He's mature. I think that's gonna allow him to reach the maximum potential out of his skill set, with the shooting, with the vision, the passing, and the ball handling, like you touched on. And shout out to Ronald Miller as well. Salute, fam. You know, a good question, a good point about the summer league too. You know, in terms of a position to showcase the young players, like Grimes as a scorer, and you know, it's interesting to see if Dice is the coach again for consistency, or Johnny Bryant or someone. And in terms of that, like in the season, we know Tibbs won't put rookies or young players in positions to trial new skills or trial thing. So that's another reason why this summer league, EJ, is critical, because you can, for 5 to 6 games, you can let these young players showcase things in their bag that they wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, summer league, and especially because this is going to be the first non-heavily impacted by COVID summer league. You know, so like it should be, and I think that's something we have to remember as fans is the pandemic really did affect so many aspects of the game, including showcasing, and I'm assuming also scouting and also development. Like, you know, so how much contact were players allowed to have with coaching and the coaching staff and the development staff, you know, in 2021, 2022, as well as 2020 into 2021. So it'll be interesting to see how many players we can actually pour more resources into, you know, now that there's more opening in terms of pandemic restrictions and things of that nature. So I'm really excited to see what happens in terms of summer league. And again, just knowing that if I, like, for example, I'm excited to see, obviously this won't happen during summer league. I don't think he'll be attending it, but I want to see IQ, what he's going to become third season. You know, what elements has he developed? I want to see, can Obi develop a more consistent shot? Because that will go a long way of helping us to better understand what happens the following off season. And that's where there's a lot of hope and promise.
Yeah, that's absolutely, that's spot on. Like you said, it's a juggling act with this young talent in terms of getting minutes. But in terms of clearing space, it does look like the positives to me are they're trying to clear Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, that would, you would have to think, would open the door for more minutes for Grimes, Reddish, and Sims if those two are gone, and if maybe they just see Jalen Brunson as the main acquisition and then giving all the younger players more minutes. I would hope, because all our cap space would be gone. We literally wouldn't be able to sign any more veterans if we did trade Burks and Noel and maybe Rose with Kemba gone, and then so that has me somewhat excited because they do need to make that decision on Cam Reddish.
Yeah, they do. I mean, and again, like, it's going to be interesting to see what they choose to do with Cam, because Cam was a move that took place when there was that question of will we be making the play in, or will we miss the play in, and to have attached a draft pick to it, I don't know if the front office can withstand the embarrassment of having picked up Cam and not having done anything positive or reasonable with Cam. Like, if Cam is not moved on in another trade to acquire an asset, or if he's not playing minutes next year, that's going to be one of those lingering things that people are going to point to like say, I have no confidence in this front office. You traded Kevin Knox and a first round draft pick for a player that you ultimately didn't play. That's one of those moves where if they're rational and logical people, I would think that Cam is going to be playing next season, and hopefully he has the minutes to play.
Yeah, it's a Leon's mandate, because I did think he did mandate that he played Jericho Sims more minutes towards the end of the season, right? They know they made that pick for Cam, and that they need to make that decision as well. So we heard from the one and only Mark Berman that Evan Fournier is a serious candidate, to be traded. And Alec Burks looks like a positive trade where we are going to get something back for an Alec Burks. Teams like Philly and Boston need that extra wing scoring help in the playoffs.
Yeah, and if I read this correctly, I think that Philly traded why am I forgetting his name?
Danny
Green.
Yeah.
So there are playoff teams, and this is why, like, I wasn't absolutely sour on Evan Fournier. He has a role in this league. It just wasn't necessarily the right fit for the team at the time. So he's an asset that can be moved. I don't know what it will take to move him. Alec Burks, I definitely think there's going to be a way to move him. I think probably the most difficult player to move will be Nerlens Noel. He played so few games last season. He was so important the season before, but he might be the most difficult piece to move. But there is a little bit of hope if you move Burks, if you move Noel. Getting Sims more time, getting Cam time, that's going to be really important. And I'm really disappointed that Cam got injured right as he started to get time. So, hopefully he'll have a chance to do so and have some minutes to play next season.
Yeah, spot on. And even Deuce McBride, remember he had the 16-16 game and then he got COVID.
Yeah.
Well, that definitely disrupted things. But you know how I like to play devil's advocate, DJ? I'm gonna
bring it on.
I got a undesirable situation, but it's worth exploring because I could see this coming with this front office. Let's say we either get Brunson or we don't get Brunson, but there's talk about John Wall. He's opted in, but might get a buyout. And then there's Kyrie Irving talk as well. So where do you sit with a John Wall, Kyrie Irving, situation with this?
Oof. Okay, let's. I'm so glad you asked this. I'm so glad you asked this, CT.
Now the chat's gonna explode.
The chat is gonna go up. I'm sorry, chat. I don't want anything to do with Kyrie. I don't want anything to do with Kyrie. He's not, especially with a young team. I don't want Kyrie around. Kyrie, this will be he was on Cleveland, he was on Boston, the Nets. Kyrie had a chance to lead a young team, and obviously he was a little bit younger, but he wasn't that much young. He wasn't that much younger. I don't want him around that team. No. In actuality, we actually have to give James Dolan props for not wanting to sign Kyrie, a few seasons ago. Like, I'll knock him, but James Dolan, props for you just like saying no, we're not signing him, and doing it at the risk of not getting KD, because I know for a fact they wanted KD, but they didn't want Kyrie. So props to you for saying no. John Wall didn't play the entire season. So I'll do you one better. Would you prefer Malcolm Brogdon or John Wall?
Oh, that's easy for me. Well, actually, maybe not as easy, because Brogdon has 3 more years, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Or is 1 more year? 3 more years, I think. I think John Wall has the 1 more year, but I would still lean towards Brogdon. But also want to throw in, and this is going to be a telling thing with what Charlotte do. What's going to happen with Scary Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward?
Yeah.
So I think come free agency, those 2 guys are the main guys Charlotte's going to want to get off of. And if Tom Thibodeau can resist either of those 2, or Leon can stop that from happening, then I'd be impressed, because I know Tom Thibodeau's wanted Gordon Hayward for a minute.
Yeah, I mean,
and maybe Charlotte want to give us some more picks to take him on if we clear salary.
Well, wasn't Fournier supposed to be Gordon Hayward in another alternate universe? I mean, I'm reading the Knicks' comment on in the chat, and I agree. Like, I don't want Wall. There's something that's troubling to me when you have a player who doesn't play an entire season. If the team is telling you stay away, there's something that scares me about that. So I don't necessarily know if I want you on my team. So I no to Wall, no to Kyrie. Terry Rozier is someone we've been flirting with, I feel like, for like the last 4 seasons. Like, at some point during a year, like, you'll hear Terry Rozier is associated with the Knicks in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully Michael Jordan. I don't know. I don't feel strong enough about Terry Rozier to like commit assets to getting him. I don't feel the same with Gordon Hayward. I think Hayward is someone who Hayward, sorry. I don't feel Hayward is a move that is worth it for a team like this. Charlotte's timeline is it's different than our timeline. And I think Gordon Hayward is a move you make when you're closer. I don't think that you make it when you are where we are.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And we're pivoting towards what's next for this organization coming up to free agency. Give us all your thoughts and opinions. But firstly, we'll touch on the statement from the Don as well, Leon Rose. As Mark Berman always says, the New York Knicks sit back and they wait until the public perception is out of control, and then they'll monitor the situation. And then if it's bad, they'll put out a statement. And that rang true. That's exactly what happened. Twitter was on fire. So Leon Rose had to put something out. Didn't surprise me at all. Did that surprise you?
No, not at all. I mean, and shout out to Mark Berman. Miss you, buddy. It's one of those things. Like, we were talking backstage earlier about this, and I think I made this point earlier tonight. Certain organizations, like, San Antonio, Greg Popovich, and obviously they've won championships, but there are certain organizations where the front office won't get fired; they'll retire. And that's not the same with the Knicks organization. That's not the same with the Knicks front office, because they don't do the things that instill confidence in the fan base. And one of those things you have to do is communicate. Even if you're not going to tell, there's no need to like divulge everything that you have as a plan. There's no need to even say that much, but to like just show your face and to say like, hey guys, we're here with you. We love this team. We know that you love this team. It just builds confidence. It's just smart. Think about how presidents run campaigns, and I'm not getting political or anything like that, but presidents, the reason why they interface with their bases is because they want people to feel a sense of confidence. And the Knicks front office does everything but that. So to send out, a press release and just say like, hey, we have 11 picks, but not be clear in terms of what the direction's going to be, it's kind of insulting. It's getting to the point of being insulting, so not impressed by it.
Yep, absolutely agree. Now, I'm not the mindset that they have to talk all the time, or a couple of times a year is good enough for me at the key times. The end of season exit interview, the end of free agency to explain certain things, in the end of the draft, or at the All-Star break. Actually, 3 times a year is fair enough for me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like you said, it's definitely deviating from some of the things they've said as well. It just seems like they're hedging their bets on different things. I feel they're not all in on rebuild, and they're sort of half in on win now as well. And it just doesn't seem like they have a whole lot of moves up their sleeve. They're just waiting, hoping in free agency that some of their connections, and they will land a few veterans. That's what it shows to me. But yeah, we all seen the statement, ladies and gents. Give us your thoughts on it. And in terms of what's next now, EJ, we're approaching free agency in just less than a week, or a week away. What do you want to happen from here on out? What's your ideal situation if you're running this thing? And what do you think might happen?
I think it's funny. When you were asking the question, I was also thinking back to the question about Leon. If you have a plan, even if you don't want to say it, you're going to be excited, and you're going to want to hint at there's a plan. So if you go back to the offseason, I'm forgetting what offseason it was. Was it 2018, 2019, when the plan was to sign KD and another, max superstar? I remember James Dolan going on local New York radio and saying hey guys, something is coming. I can't say what it is, but there was an excitement. We all knew what he was talking about, and he didn't want to get hit with tampering fines and the charge. But when there's a plan, you allude to it. You even if you don't want to say what it is, you make sure that have confidence. I can't tell you what it is, but listen, we have a plan. Remain calm. In terms of what I think the plan is, I think their plans is basically they're hedging their bets, and they're going to say they're going to try for Brunson. I don't know if they're going to get him, because again, that 5th year option, or that 5th year that Dallas can offer, it's been rare for me to actually see a player decline a 5th year in a contract. I can't actually think of, and maybe someone in the chat can help me out, I can't think of that many significant players who've declined a 5-year contract versus a 4-year contract. So I don't know where they go if Brunson says no. And that's largely been the track record for this front office, is that whomever they wanted hasn't necessarily signed. So I don't even know who the fallback would be. And I pray, and I'm hoping it's not. I don't think Kyrie would even if the Knicks were to make a play, I'm pretty sure Kyrie's just using the Knicks as leverage. So it might be that we do start the season with Derrick Rose and IQ as the point, and we re-sign Mitch, and that might be it. I'm not sure if there's much else they could do that would be noteworthy.
Yep. No, that's very fair what you said. And good point by building blocks too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You could get there in the sign and trade. I wouldn't rule that out.
That's a good point. Definitely.
But
shout out to you. Yeah.
In terms of my thoughts, I feel like the Brunson thing's going to happen. If I had to lean one way or the other, I think we get Brunson, because I think this front office knows, the moves last night, it just, they're responsible, people in terms of being around this industry long enough. They know the backlash. To trade out of the 11th pick, to get out of Kemba, to clear space. If they miss out on a Brunson, it's the end of them, I think. And they have all the connections they need to know. I've got to make that guess that I feel like we do get Brunson based off of that. And then in terms of what else is next, I feel like Julius, they start to really look at Julius. Maybe they carry Julius into the season, see if there's a change, and then make canvas, try to maybe boost his value a bit more. But yeah, it is a little clunky in terms of shooting with Brunson, RJ, and Randall. It's clunky. Now Randall's got more money on his deal. He's still young enough to find a home but I don't see the value where it's at. I don't see us getting great value back in a trade unless we bring him back into the season and see how he looks.
Yeah, I think Randall's going to be here at the start of the season. I got to give a quick shout out, if you don't mind, CT,
Yeah.
to Jason Vaccaro. This Caro, only the Knicks for Court Brunson, like he's some behind us type superstar. That's why I started laughing. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah, that was really funny, man. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Randall is definitely going to be here at the start of the season. I do think that eventually Randall is a tradable chip. I mean, for as much as we had issues, many of us had issues, not every fan, but many of us had issues with him last season. He is one of those pieces that if he does play well at the start of the season, he's a tradable chip. I do believe that contract, taking that discount, that contract wasn't the worst contract. And I do think that, once things kind of shake out during the course of the season, there might be a team or two that is interested in Julius. I do agree with you that does a Brunson sign-in get in the way of rehabilitating Randall's value? That's the concern, because Randall's like one of these guys, like he's like, oh, you have a point guard. Yeah, it's called me. So I don't know, Taylor. Yeah, like you're not taking my touches away. And in part because he was paid like the lead guy. He was the lead guy in 2020, 2021. So, that's part of the fun of basketball. Is like you can pay people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they accept new roles, as seasons change. So, yeah, it's a very fascinating. It's very fascinating where we are. So,
Yep. Where they can, repair some value is if they turn Cam Reddish into something, that'd be significant for me. If they prioritize him, they give him minutes, he stays healthy. Yeah, he's a trade piece. Like a player has talent when teams really are calling, and teams are calling for Cam Reddish. I expect us to get something of positive worth for Alec Burks as well. Maybe we need to attach that for Nerlens Noel to get off of him, and it's a neutral for that. Derrick Rose, I hope we trade him at least at the trade deadline. Maybe coming in. I know he's an injury away from that contract not being great. So with all the stacked young point guards we may have on the roster now with Montero, maybe that was a part of their thinking with seeing what Rokas could do in Europe. Maybe that was sort of the situation with Derrick Rose coming to a wind down in the Mecca with that situation. And for me, for Randall, I think I want to see him take less threes. I think it's obvious that the 3-point shooting was a factor of the empty arenas. As well. Be more unselfish, obviously be held more accountable, distribute the rock a lot more, and start and gradually move over from RJ taking over late in games. I mean, if you had to trust the player late at the end of the game, would you trust RJ more with the shot? Or even if he's not the most clutch for the future, I'd love to give him more of those chances.
Yeah, I saw someone in the chat say this, and I'm really sorry I didn't pick up your name, and I'll try to find it. The Knicks issue is there's no clear definitive number one, and what I think the person meant in the chat is a number one that's like NBA superstar star level number one. Even RJ at this point in his career isn't a number like 1A. However, he's still JJ wrote in the chat, is there even a number two? You guys are on fire tonight. I love this. This is great.
It's all by committee.
I know, right? So like when you ask the question of who do you trust at the end, part of the success of the 2020-2021 season was a lot of times it was D Rose with the ball. And that was a big factor that was missing last season because D Rose was injured. So I think this will be a year where we're going to see more RJ in those moments. And I think this will be an opportunity for him to prove if he's that guy. And you're right. I think D Rose. I love D Rose. I love the fact that he's found a way to transform his career. But this is the moment where there's going to be a transition here. Kemba had to go. It's going to be time for D Rose to go, and we're going to see a number of these other contracts start to be shipped out because there are only 15 slots. 15, 16 slots. Not everyone can stay, and with Keel, with Montero, with Rokas, at some point, maybe not this, definitely not this season, but maybe next season, we have to start figuring out who's going to be what, and that's part of the game.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. There are ways that next season can be a success for me internally. I mentioned before the development of the young players, but offensively, we need to get more creative as well.
Mm-hmm.
Be more unselfish, hold guys more accountable. Hopefully we bring in a coordinator like we've been talking about forever. Tom doesn't consult any assistant coach throughout the game. So they obviously do help with the scouting reports and everything. But, I feel like Tom will be, if I had to make a guess, I think Tom will be on a shorter leash next season with the front office. I feel like they gave him that chance to make the play-in. They said, this year is your year. All right, we'll give it to you. Try to push for it. But next season, no, with their necks on the line, I don't think they can be so reckless, but to just give the keys to Tom Thibodeau to do what he likes. I think there's a lot of young talent on this roster, and he can't mismanage it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this with Berman in February. Alignment, organizational alignment, and I'm big on that. If you see something that works and is successful, you have to try that model. Don't try the models that are anomalies. The good organizations have, organizational alignment. They have the team president that sets this vision and directive. You have a GM that understands it and subscribes to it, and you have a coach that subscribes to it as well. And it just seems like our favorite team, doesn't have that alignment. It's almost as if Tom Thibodeau was the best coach, but not necessarily the right coach for the organizational alignment.
Yep.
Should it have been Kenny Atkinson? What he did in New Jersey prior to KD and Kyrie signing, that seems to have been more of what we may have needed at the time, even though Tom Thibodeau is a respected head coach and has had a great career, doesn't necessarily make him the right coach. And that's what I love about Golden State. I was just fascinated this off season with what they've done. And dude, and this, CT, because we've talked about this, what they're going to be in the future, with Kuminga and Wiseman and, Moody and Jordan Poole. It's, a shout out to Dirty Dancer. It can't just be about friends. It has to be about organizational vision. And I don't feel confident in us having that.
Yeah, I completely agree. The whole idea of this front office with different opinions is that there's a neutral voice that Leon can listen to and make his decision. But it does seem like it's more one way. It's CAA, it's the inner circle. And I feel like to be successful, you have to open your doors to new opinions, new fresh voices, other agencies, all of that stuff. I mean, this is a business. And I think that's why the Knicks, there's the NBA, and then there just seems to be the Knicks over in their corner. That's why the way that the experts and the media and the beat writers always talk about the NBA, and then they talk about the Knicks differently, because they put themselves in their own corner as well. They need to open up the circle a bit and function more like a small market team, like we say quite often as well.
Yeah, and I'll say this, I am sick and tired of the Knicks being a laughing stock of the league. Think about how quickly New Jersey went from being a joke to being a team that's covered seriously, not necessarily in New York, but nationally and internationally, because there was something that Josiah and Sean Marks, they were able to build. Now, obviously, KD and Kyrie, there's been some things that have happened that have changed that. But what they were before 2018, 2019, you could see that there was a clear vision of where they wanted to go. Danny Ainge and what he did in Boston. Now, obviously, they didn't win a championship at this point, but they've been set up for success. And I think that there's just something about organizations that have clear, experienced, smart people in those positions. And like I said earlier, there's no salary cap for your front office, So, yeah, I totally agree that Leon will be on a short leash, and same goes for Tom.
Yep. I could see Tom being fired this year. I don't see Leon and co being fired this year. I think Dolan would give them one more year at least, because he did give him a big deal. To fire another president would be a bigger ripple effect than just firing the coach, I feel like. And we already know World Wide West has seen the writing on the wall. EJ, he was the one early in the season to get in Dolan's ear and to talk down on Thibodeau's future in New York and reasons why we need to pivot right now. So that's a storyline that we're going to have to listen to all season. And then we're obviously going to know what happens with Johnny Bryant, the lone non-Tom Thibodeau coaching staff on this team as well. And it's interesting that yesterday, Utah is still interviewing different names. So it may not be a conclusion that Johnny Bryant is going to get that gig. But to please Donovan Mitchell, they better be smart and sign his boy up quick.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Like, I just thought of this as well, too. What places us in a very unique position is almost every team in the league has one of these three things right. They have the right front office, the right head coach, or the right number one player. We're one of the few teams that we can't definitively say we have one of those three things right. Like, you know what I mean? So like, that's kind of the situation. So like, even if you're Utah, right, you know that Donovan Mitchell's a very good player. He's a very good player. Now there are questions as to whether or not he's part of like that top 10, top 15 best players in the league, but he's incredible. So you can count like, okay, excellent player. Rudy Gobert, excellent player. Now with Quinn Snyder out of the head coach, like that's going to be the next thing. Can they get a check mark in terms of coach? We can't do that here. We know that Sean Marks is a bright guy. Steve Nash, questionable head coach, but we know that KD is an otherworldly talent. So like, but the problem with our team is like, we can't say definitively, is Leon Rose the right basketball person? We can't say that. Is Tom Thibodeau the absolute right coach? We can't say that. Is RJ a current superstar? We can't say that. And that's part of what makes this such a difficult process, is we can't check off those three things and then add James Dolan on top of it.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. It's sort of like we're C grades across every category at the moment.
Yeah.
Not even B grades. Which is why my main preference was to just continue to build through the draft. Like Presti's doing. Keep adding new young talent until more than one or two of them become all-stars and pop. And you're treading the treadmill. I understand that's off-putting, but you're running the right race. Running the veteran hope for free agency, all of that. That's running a race too, but it's like the finish line keeps getting, may get further and further away. Whereas building through the draft, you're actually getting closer to your goal by getting in fresh young talent. And I put in the chat, I could see Jay Wright being a guy that that Dolan turns to as well. I think he's always wanted to be that coach. He's free now. He'll have a few years of rest and thinking about what his next move is.
It's funny that I was actually going to ask you, and I was like, should I ask CT who's the next? Because, I don't necessarily like to talk about people losing their jobs, but I mean, I do think that the writing is starting to be on the wall that, Tibbs probably won't make it past next season, because I think part of it is like, you have to kind of figure out, are we even, I don't know if we're top six, and I know free agency hasn't happened yet, but I can't imagine a world where the Knicks are going to be next season top six or top eight. So if we're not top six, top eight, that I don't think Tibbs gets another year. So do we start thinking about, who's next? And I do see a couple of names in the chat, where someone said Sue Bird over Tibbs. You know, and that's the thing. Like,
Becky Hammond.
Becky Hammond. Will we be the first to hire? And she was a former New York Liberty. Like, so shout out to her. I mean, she's a brilliant mind and had a great career.
New York's own.
Yeah. So do we start thinking about that? Because I don't think Leon's getting fired next season. I do agree with you. I don't think he's getting fired. I do think the first domino to go would be Tom.
Yeah, we know Dolan likes big names, so I can't see us. Let's say Tibbs is gone, or the next coach after Tibbs. I can't see it being that young Johnny Bryant situation. I just can't see it. He loves that big name. I mean, he's done it over and over. Phil Jackson. Then I know Leon Rose. Is a pretty established name in the industry.
Yeah.
But I hope I'm wrong. I mean, at some point, James Dolan's got to just learn that, okay, everything I'm trying is not working. Let me just go left of field. I mean, Quinn Snyder is out there. Kenny Atkinson was my first choice, and that's interesting that he reneged on the Charlotte deal to stay for Golden State. Could he be Steve Kerr's successor?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think it's going to be, honestly, like I would have loved Kenny Atkinson a few years ago, but if I were Kenny Atkinson, I wouldn't believe in Golden State. Not with how they're situated, not with how things seem to be aligned. I think that we can wish it, but I don't think it's like a realistic possibility. But yeah, I it's funny. Like he loves these big names so that they can be. We're the most press conference having team who doesn't like to actually have press conferences or like meet with the media. So it's like splashy name for this one press conference. For the rest of the time, there won't be any media availability. So, but I don't know who that next. Quinn Snyder is an interesting name. Because I mean, I will ask you this question too: is do you want to have Jay Wright, who, if memory serves me correctly, I don't remember, has he coached on the professional level? I don't remember. I might be getting older, but I don't remember him.
I don't
being
think
an
so,
NBA coach.
I do think he's tied. And chat, correct me if I'm wrong. He might be tied to that agency.
Yeah, Pudge says Snyder is CAA.
Snyder is?
Yeah, according to Pudge NYC.
Okay. In terms of the moves, we know Kemba's gone. What do you think about like Bradley Beal, these kind of guys? Anthony Simons, if he shakes loose, DeJounte Murray. Maybe there is more targets than the Knicks have there, than we think in terms of what their eyes are set on. And I want to ask you too, we talked about in the last show with Berman about Taj Gibson swapped out with his salary. Looks like they're going to clear or decline his $5 million. And I think Carmelo Anthony might be a Knick.
Yeah, I love Melo. I mean, I remember that 2011 trade. I was so excited. And I was singing "I'm Coming Home" just like everybody else, like, so excited. I don't know if I'll sing it again if he resigns. I do think, and I said it with Berman on, and with you as well too. I do think if Taj is not back, you do need a veteran voice. You can't have a team that has so many young players and not have that person who's gone through it, particularly in New York. New York is a very interesting, sports market. And obviously the Knicks are an international team. But like I said last time in the last show, if Carmelo is around, because Carmelo's made some mistakes in his career. He's one of those people who's had the ability to transform his career and evolve. Sometimes we forget that Carmelo had that year where teams wouldn't call him. He was out of the league. So, he went from being like an all-world talent to being out of the league. So, I think for some of these players, you need that kind of wisdom and that kind of voice that people respect. And that's Berman saying that. That's not just me saying that. That's, Carmelo does have cachet in ways that some other players don't have, especially in New York City.
Yep. One of the reasons why I'm leaning towards it happening is because with D Rose still here, Randall, I think they might be giving Tom Thibodeau this season or to see how we start. I think James Dolan definitely wants to get the Knicks back into the playoffs or a play-in. So I feel like the aim this season with Brunson, it's obviously to try to compete in the East, make the play-in again, bring in some of these extra veterans, and then see where things are going. I think if I had to guess, I think that's the strategy they're going to go for. I'm not particularly in favor of it because, like we touched on earlier in the show, we know how strong the East is. I mean, we'll talk about who was the winners and losers out of draft, but it seems like every team got stronger with young talent in the East. The only team I could see clearly regressing is Washington if they lose Bradley Beal.
Yeah. Can we do this really quickly?
Yep.
Can we go team by team and who do you think and who's going to make the playoffs in the East?
Absolutely.
You want to play that game really quickly?
Yep.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Boston.
I think Boston's going to be in the top 4.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's no way that Boston doesn't make the playoffs. Miami
might regress slightly, getting older. Maybe what kind of moves they made? Maybe Lowry leaves, but yeah, still top 4, top 5.
Milwaukee.
Top 2.
Yeah. So we're already at 3 teams. All right. I'm gonna leave the Nets out because we don't have a clue what's gonna happen with them. Toronto.
Toronto is going to be interesting. Look, if we stack with veterans, I could see us being equal or better than Toronto, but they do have good young talent.
Yeah. All right. So we'll
what about you?
I think Boston definitely. I think Miami, depending on what happens with Jimmy Butler, because I think Jimmy Butler and Philadelphia, there's been some conversation about them. But I will say that I do think Boston, Miami, Milwaukee are definite. I do think Toronto might find a way into it. So we're already at 4 teams.
Yep. Cleveland better than the Knicks for sure.
Cleveland is way better.
Yep.
Cleveland is way better. So that's
Sexton
5.
back or healthy. Wait, who did Cleveland get in the draft too? Because I forget.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Hey, could somebody in the chat put that too? Like, who Cleveland got?
I feel like it was a wing, Tari Eason or someone.
Yeah, it was.
I know they didn't get their guy in Malachi Branham. He went 20th.
Yeah.
To the Spurs. Yeah. Agbaji.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So
nice fit.
Chicago.
See, they regress. I feel.
Depending on what happens with Zach
Chicago regress. Yep.
So yeah. So I think the LaVine question, because so some of the reports I've been reading, LaVine is either definitely staying or LaVine is gone.
Yep. Agree. Yep. Vucevic is getting a bit older. And we know that what's his name, Lonzo Ball is injury prone. Caruso can get injured as well.
Mm-hmm. So all right. So it depends what we think about that. The 76ers.
76ers, yeah, will be in the top 4 or 5. I feel.
Okay. I agree. Totally agree.
But their window's closing with Harden. His game's clearly regressing.
Ooh, yeah, his game.
You got to be worried with Embiid's window. They need to be aggressive.
Yeah. Harden is going to be that's going to be one of the storylines for free agency. Like, what kind of contract do you give to James Harden? Like, that's going to be, I don't know that. Oof, that game is aging like bad cheese. Like, that's just. Oof. How about Atlanta?
Look, with more building blocks, I think, and they're going to be aggressive. They're either going to get, by reports, they're going to get Rudy Gobert or somebody. They're targeting a center. So yeah. Not hating, but yeah, Atlanta's better than the Knicks.
Yeah. Charlotte.
Charlotte, we could compete. We could be better. I could see if we stack with Brunson or some veterans. But I would expect Charlotte to improve even more. LaMelo Ball. What did they get? They got their big man, Mark Williams.
Yeah.
They got Mark Williams, which fills a huge need. LaMelo Ball lobs to Mark Williams. I mean,
yeah,
that's what has me frightened. Cleveland and Charlotte were the two teams that I was thinking all last season because we're going the slow route. They were gonna overtake us.
Yeah. And Bridges, his games, whew, he matured. I mean, that's the kind of like what we were talking earlier about, like hoping that certain players that we have, their games mature. You hope and you pray that, like, at least an IQ or an Obi has that kind of like development, that jump in their game. Not necessarily saying that they're the same kind of player, but they have a similar kind of growth in their third season. So I mean,
just real quick before you say anything, on the money, Sherwin, the Knicks could be the worst team. And to John's point, I hope we're in last place. The 2023 NBA draft, we could be sitting here 1 year from now. We could be Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, man. That's the hope. I mean, but that I and not even go through all the teams. Like I think like Orlando. Yeah. I didn't even mention Indiana. So Dirty Dancer, like I definitely see you. Indiana, I think it depends on what they do. Orlando's Orlando. But if you count all the teams that we're talking about, there are easily 7 teams that are way better. And we didn't even talk about the Nets. Because we don't know what they're going to be, by like next week. We don't know what's going to happen.
That's why it's so wrong to go all in this particular time. We should be just trying to continue to stack the young talent with some of these upcoming teams.
Yeah. And like, Detroit, like, they're, this is not, next season is not going to probably be a great season for them, but 2-3 years, who knows what they're going to be as well too. So, Ronald Miller says like Knicks will be 7-10. I mean,
as a basketball purist, I'm actually happy that the East is getting stronger, just from the league perspective. It's been imbalanced for so long.
Absolutely.
And we actually saw it this year. The West record was weaker to make the play. The Knicks would have made the play-in with their record in the West.
Yeah. That's that was crazy. That's what happened last season.
You got Sacramento and those kind of teams that have been down for so long. Minnesota coming back up, and I'm rooting for New Orleans as well. I know they got Dyson Daniels, the Aussie player. I just like their overall roster and the pieces they got now.
They're going to be a scary team next year, especially with the McCollum pickup, and depending on what Zion is next year. Brandon Ingram plus the CJ McCollum, but
and Willie Green.
Oh my gosh, like that's going to be a scary team, But yeah, you're right. Like, the balance shifted, but that again speaks to like front office and like having the ability to recognize what's happening in basketball, what's happening in the conference, and being able to make moves according to what's happening, and not just being stuck in your own silo and saying like, oh, here's Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, and we're gonna be, top 4 again. No, like the other teams got better as well.
Yep. I know each season has a mind of its own, but yeah, like I don't think we're telling any lies. I think it's going to be incredibly tough for the Knicks to make the play-in even, which is why it's funny. Are they digging their own grave? Is Tom Thibodeau, or it's just a ticking bomb basically, pushing themselves in the all-in now thing. Let's say they do get Brunson and some other piece, and they run Randall back and all that. It's still going to be a challenge making the top 8. With this team, they need to make a splash. If what their plan is to compete, they need to get a Bradley Beal. get a Zach LaVine, get a Sexton, get some more difference makers, because we are fair ways behind.
Yeah, no, I honestly, like, I don't, like, we went through the list. Like, I don't see a way for, I would love to have the conversation with the decision makers and to see if they would be honest and explain to us their argument for how the team will be a contender next year. I would just love to hear the argument, because I don't.
I would love to be a fly on that wall.
Yeah, I would love to have heard. I
Yeah.
mean, and what are the conversations they're having, like, in terms of where they see themselves relative to the rest of the league.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put it at that yet. We're only a week away or so from free agency, and we're obviously going to know a lot more. They're either backing themselves into a corner, or they know something we don't know,
which is possible.
Which isn't just Brunson; it's Brunson and someone else, or something like that could be brewing. There's a reason they want to also accumulate all these picks. Eventually they're going to put them all in the middle of the table for a Donovan Mitchell, for an Anthony Simons, for a DeJounte Murray. Ideally, who is that guy for you? If that is the route where they're trying to go, who is the guy that's going to change this thing?
It's a good question.
Because I used to think it was Karl Towns, but I don't think he's leaving Minnesota anymore.
I also, here's the thing. Like, it has to be a point guard. It has to be a point guard. Oh my gosh! All these teams making big splashes while the Knicks kick puddles. Amazing.
And to what dream? Maybe being screwed is the best thing for us. It's Victor Wembanyama and the Thompson twins, and
yeah.
I mean it could be but even a broken clock is right twice a day. So
and it's
maybe
been
the
30
Knicks
plus years.
the Knicks stinking it up. We do put ourselves in that situation where we're the fourth worst team in the East.
Yeah. If you were to ask me, like, who should it be, if it's DeJounte Murray or Donovan,
or Sexton, he's more attainable, I feel.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad. Any one of them.
How about Fox? It's interesting that the Kings threw away the chance at Ivy to keep De'Aaron Fox. To me, that doesn't. We've seen enough of Fox. If I was Sacramento, I would have swapped that out.
Yeah, but the problem with the Kings, though, is, like, if you go back to my theory of, like, you need one of the three, like, front office, coach, players. It's not that the Kings haven't had players. It's that their front office might be as screwy as ours. Without, like, clarity or vision, So it's like, yeah, sometimes maybe it's a computer running the Kings. Like, maybe it's not a real person. It's like, some kid, like a 5-year-old playing with the computer, like, just randomly making trades that works.
It's Vivek. I think they have that nosy owner that James Dolan used to be. He interferes in the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
Remember they wanted the reason they didn't get Luka Doncic, I think, because they didn't want to hire that Igor coach.
Yeah.
Or something, right? There was something petty. I can't remember. Chat, help me out. But I mean, you can't be running your organization like that.
No, especially when there has to be a level of honesty. Like, you know what you know what you don't know. Like, I mean, I love the Rangers, but I'm not a huge hockey guy, and I'll admit that, and I can enjoy it, and I can say, like, hey, this is beautiful, this is a great sport, but like, if Knicks buzz ever became Rangers buzz, please don't call me CT, because I'd be the wrong guy for it. But when you have those owners in those front offices that aren't necessarily honest with themselves, you see, like, certain levels of dysfunction, which it actually works to the advantage of certain teams in the league, because you can use that organization and take its resources. So if we try to trade for De'Aaron Fox, maybe it's an easier get because Sacramento is so dysfunctional. And that was part of the conversation that happened last season. There was so much Julius for De'Aaron Fox conversation. Whereas, like, you know, I don't know if I want to do a deal with San Antonio. Dude, actually, I don't know if I want Donovan Mitchell, not because it's Donovan Mitchell, but because of Danny Ainge. I am scared of a phone call between Leon Rose and Danny Ainge. I don't think that would go well.
Yeah. And I said this about the possibility of a Spurs trade. I said this the other day. I think they're still salty with us with the Mook Morris backflip.
Yeah.
I don't think, especially with Popovich still there, I don't see them trading DeJounte Murray to the Knicks. I think there's legit animosity over that situation. That literally changed the fate of Jakob Poeltl and some other people. That for business wise, that's not good for relationships. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, that you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I saw you tweet that, and you were absolutely right about that. But,
and in terms of Fox, I would rather Brunson's salary, because De'Aaron Fox is around the 200+ mil supermax. Jalen Brunson's max dwarfs that. I mean, that dwarfs Jalen Brunson's max. So in terms of player and salary, I would probably choose the Brunson at 25 mil for 4 or 5 years, because that's only 125 versus 200 something.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, like, if you gave me the choice of Jalen Brunson, you can almost go player by player. Like Jalen Brunson versus De'Aaron Fox, I'd go Jalen Brunson, because you don't necessarily have to give up. You don't have to give up any, like, resources. You don't have to trade. You don't necessarily have to trade assets for it unless it's a sign and trade. And also, like, Dallas has done business with the Knicks so many different times. So obviously there's a relationship between the two. When we started talking about Donovan Mitchell, you definitely got my brain going in terms of, like, I don't want Scott Perry making a phone call to Danny Ainge, because look at what Danny Ainge did to the Nets, you know, so many years ago. And I don't trust our front office to make that phone call. Same with the Spurs, and you talked about it before. You know, there are not that many teams I can think of that, you know, I'm not afraid of the Knicks getting fleeced in a deal. Like, many of the other organizations, they're run so much better than ours.
Yep. That's the truth of it all. I think this is just a pathway that's going to lead to a dead end, and let's hope it's sooner than later, and we can get back on track. But as we get ready to wrap up, you know, we'll just briefly touch on our thoughts on the prospects that we picked up, to everyone that just jumped in later in the show, and appreciate everybody rocking with us for the whole show. And Trevor Keels, I was a big fan of the pickup as well, given the upside swing, 18 years of age, and his positional versatility. He projects to be a great shooter because he was excellent in high school as well. Had a down year shooting, but was a 5-star recruit. The Knicks were dead last in positional versatility at dead 30th, and he can guard, I could see, between 2 to 4 in the league with his stocky frame. And he drives strong to the hoop, finishes in traffic, be a secondary playmaker, and his size and strength is a player we haven't had in a while as well. A similar role that a Grant Williams, you know, I know Kendrick Perkins referred him to Desmond Bain. Did you catch that? And then Desmond Bain tweeted.
That was a great tweet. Yeah, I saw that tweet. Desmond. If that's what you're getting, if you're getting a Desmond Bain, sign me up. If you're getting a Desmond Bain-esque player, sign me up right now. I will. I'll quit my job and I'll, like, you know, carry your bags. You know, drive you from point A to point. I'll drive you to the Garden, between the Garden and Westchester. I'll sign you up if we get a Desmond Bain-like player. I'll be your personal Uber.
He may not be of that particular ceiling, but like to shout out to Geraldine, who's a Dookie fan, and she watched every game. And what I see on tape, he's just that He's got that chip on his shoulder. He plays tough. He plays hard. We don't have a guy with that kind of frame as well.
Mm-hmm.
He starts getting stronger and stronger, and he's only 18 years of age. He's built like the Hulk.
Yeah.
Already. So that's quality. The Knicks, it was number one need on the board at 42, according to shotquality.com. And the Knicks took that player that fits that roster as well. So yeah, let's wait and see. Excited for summer league in less than a week, a week free agency. And then the best move of the night for me was Jean Montero. He was a first round talent in many mocks all throughout the college season. His stock dropped for a number of reasons with the OTE, but he's a real point guard. He flashes high-level scoring like a Tony Parker, Darius Garland comparisons, and maybe a floor like Terry Rozier. Knock is his size, but he's going to put on weight. He's going to get stronger. I feel, players just need to mature to get stronger. But he could be a two-way point guard. He's good on the ball. He averaged, I think, more than 2 steals per 36. So he's sneaky with the steals. He's got deep range with scoring. His shot selection is the question mark, but playing in more organized environment will help. He's got the speed as well, and incredible feel for the game. I think he's our number 1, number 2 true point guard on the roster from day one. Now it's going to be interesting the terms of the deal, whether he gets an opportunity, but I think we'll start with summer league and then we'll go from there.
Definitely. And we have to remember, and I always have to remind myself that these are not complete players yet. These are players who are young. Even RJ, our IQ, and I know that a lot of us love IQ and Obi. Even though Obi's older, like Obi's like one of the older players who are part of this young core. These are kids who are younger than 23. Obi, I think, is 23. RJ, I think, is 21. And Montero's 18. Keels is 18. There's a physical development that has to happen, and for these players, there's also a mental maturity and maturation that has to happen as well too. So. Just remember, for everyone who's in the chat, and myself included, think about who you were at 18 versus who you were at 23. And we're asking kids to do things that is quite different. That sometimes their bodies are not yet ready to do, or their mental fortitude is not quite there yet.
Yep, completely agree. But on the other hand, I'm really confident that these guys are coming in with a little bit more ready-made aspects. I think a 5-star recruit playing in a big program, Duke, and like I touched on with Montero, he played since 16 years of age in Spain. Left home, is going to be one of the more mature games on our team because he finds the open man. He's a great playmaker as well. So that changed the night for me. It was still disappointing because I wanted to make the 11th spot selection. But to get a first-round kind of guy like Montero, it would be akin to us getting the 30th pick from OKC and taking a swing on Montero. So that changed my thoughts. But EJ, appreciate you as always. Been a great show. Any other thoughts you want to get out there as we head into free agency, and we'll continue to chop this thing up?
No, I mean, just want to thank you again, CT, for having me on the program. It's always great to be here. Great to be here like off season. Shout out to the entire chat. You guys were amazing tonight. To the point where sometimes I was speaking and I couldn't help but laugh because you guys were hysterical. Shout out also to Mark Berman, the legend. Always have a chance to be on here. Usually when he's here, check out, please do me a favor. Please follow him on Twitter, send him some shout outs. I grew up reading Mark Berman in New York and reading the New York Post. He's an amazing writer. Sometimes he frustrates New York Knicks fans, but just think about how much of a legend he has been in the sports world. So shout out to Mark Berman, buddy. And, shout out to you, CT. I always tell you this offline. You do an amazing job. Please, everyone, support CT, support Knicks Buzz. It's a great platform. And, I'm just ready and excited for 2022, 2023. So thank you so much again.
Yep. No, I really, really appreciate those words. And yep, like Mark Berman, friend of the show, always comes on. He's off on leave. thoughts with him, his family, and EJ. Yeah, amazing show, chopping this up. It was therapeutic. Like I said at the start of the show, it was built up from last night. It just paints the picture of, okay, let's not overreact in the immediate. Some things happened after the draft that sort of changed my thoughts a little. I don't think we're on the particular right track, like we summed up, but things can still get better from here. We've got free agency in a week away. We've got summer league as well. Appreciate everyone in the chat. Again, the best chat in the business, and all the thoughts and questions thrown at us. A lot of the same line of thinking as we were. You took the words out of our mouth, which helps. And I'll be back on again tomorrow night. We're going to have Josh Uncle Folio on to get his thoughts on the draft and moving forward. We're going to get a whole heap of guests on over the next coming weeks and free agency to chop this thing up now that the draft is in the books. But this New York Knicks situation, it's 24/7, and the buzz is always there. So without further ado, appreciate you guys. Have a good night and see you soon.